In this segment, we're going to take a deeper dive into the topic of infatuation and the effects that it can have on our relationships. Learning about infatuation will help you avoid disappointing relationships and promote meaningful ones, and ultimately help you become more emotionally intelligent in how you perceive yourself and other people. Why do so many people mistake infatuation for real love? Infatuation is a form of initial attraction that arises very quickly, and it's very intense. Many people confuse infatuation with being in love, but the two concepts are very different. In the movies, or even in the real world, we often see people who claim to experience love at first sight, experiencing really strong romantic attraction for someone only after knowing them for a short period of time. So in a romantic comedy, this experience might work out for the characters, but in reality, things are very different. Infatuation is a part of the romantic experience and one that is deeply ingrained in our culture. In some cases, that initial spark that we're feeling when we're talking to someone we're attracted to, it might lead us to assume that we are in love or bound to fall in love with them, especially because we see so much in the media that really blurs the lines between infatuation and real love. We've even developed a vocabulary to express the way that infatuation can sometimes appear or dissipate in a matter of weeks or months when we are referring to ourselves or our friends as professional daters or serial monogamists. And we laugh and we joke about going out to meet our future ex. And it just exacerbates and just adds to all of the confusion. Of course, infatuation isn't bad. In fact, it's the foundation. It helps us form that relationship, and it actually motivates us to get to know people better. But at the same time, infatuation doesn't have enough depth. It doesn't last long enough to serve as the basis for a strong and long-lasting relationship. By definition, infatuation is a feeling of passion or admiration for someone that only lasts for a short period of time, and it's unsustainable by design. So for this reason, it's important to know that infatuation exists and how it impacts our interpersonal relationships, both positively and negatively. And so once you understand the role of infatuation, you will be in a much better position to know whether your love at first sight can really blossom into a healthy relationship, or whether you need to just move on from someone, even though you're still feeling that strong romantic desire towards them. It's important to be able to distinguish infatuation from more deeper, stable, and more permanent feelings for someone. And the challenge, of course, is that we're often caught up in a crush or so excited that we're really clicking with somebody special that we need to really have the emotional awareness to take a step back and understand that we're all just being this best version of ourselves during infatuation. And we're not able to see who someone really is until this stage completes. What is the main purpose of infatuation? Unfortunately, nobody hands us a guidebook on how to create a loving relationship the moment that we become adults. Instead, our relationship skills are developed by a set of factors including our biological responses, our previous interactions with other people, and even the cultural messages that we receive from social media, TV, movies, and books. It's because of these influences, not to mention the powerful feelings that infatuation can cause, that can keep us from having a solid sense of guidance in developing a loving relationship. Meaning you might become romantically attached to someone who is unable, unwilling, or doesn't know how to even recognize your emotional needs, let alone meet them. The role of infatuation is to give you an opportunity to learn about someone that you find attractive, and then over time determine whether they are the type of person that you want to build a relationship with. Can you share more about the biological effects of infatuation? Biologically, infatuation causes us to have this experience, this flood of emotions, such as oxytocin. And it causes the brain to release neurotransmitters like dopamine and epinephrine. We feel such a rush when we're interacting with the person that we're attracted to. In essence, our brain is stimulating the same reward centers that would be activated during activities like eating or having sex or taking drugs. Dr. Helen Fisher, who studied the science of love, she noted that infatuation in some ways resembles addiction. Just like a person who might become hooked on the rush that they get from having a drink, winning a hand at poker, or taking a part in an extreme sport, they can also develop a learned association between the behavior of choice and the pleasant feelings that it creates. So this is the same when we're infatuated with someone. That certain someone gives us the same type of rush, and we feel like we're becoming hooked. It's like an addiction. From a biological standpoint, it's highly unlikely that we would have ever developed a behavioral trait like infatuation unless it played a really beneficial role. So bearing in mind, most people don't become addicted to infatuation. Oftentimes, we're seeking to develop a stronger, more stable relationship with someone that we're infatuated with, which becomes less based on obtaining a short-term rush of pleasure and more about developing a long-term reward in the form of love. However, most of us have done or said at least one ridiculous thing around someone that we've had a crush on, right? Yeah, so we might make up an excuse to talk to them or come up with an elaborate plan just to spend just a little bit more time with them. This is an expression of the habit-forming aspect of infatuation. And those types of actions show how infatuation can influence how we make decisions. Someone who is infatuated might behave in a way that contradicts their own values, like having a one-night stand, having unprotected sex, or even neglecting responsibilities to their family and friends and work life in order to spend more time with someone of their infatuation. These risky behaviors can occur more easily with people who already have difficulties regulating their own behaviors and avoiding impulsive actions. You'll notice too that these behaviors are somewhat similar to the actions of a person who is addicted to drugs, gambling, or other actions that carry a rush. Even though most of us don't endanger ourselves physically by having a crush, it's still important to monitor our own behaviors and perspectives as we experience and navigate infatuation. That way we can make sure that we're learning from and building on the experience of infatuation, instead of making it the sole reason for striking up a relationship. Every person wants to feel like that they're in control of their own lives, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to feel in control of yourself and how you respond to the events that affect you. In some ways, infatuation can feed this notion of control by making you believe that you have managed to find the perfect partner. As with the emotional rush that we get from infatuation, the pleasant feeling of having control over our relationship can be self-reinforcing. It's important to remember that healthy feelings of self-control are not dependent on the traits and actions of others. With infatuation, people sometimes run the risk of thinking that they have found or even earned the perfect partner while temporarily blinding themselves to the person's shortcomings. Because we love the experience of being infatuated and we fear that it might end, again, both partners are presenting the best version of themselves. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, this aspect of infatuation can be very useful. It's a starting point for developing a deeper and more meaningful relationship. However, as infatuation begins to complete as a stage of the relationship, a person tends to be less afraid of a partner rejecting them. Yeah, they are more comfortable with showing each other their true selves, being honest with each other, and even acknowledging their needs and vulnerabilities. But if you're simply trying to keep up a facade and act like a perfect partner, you avoid those opportunities for honesty. So to avoid that kind of negative outcome, you have to have an awareness that infatuation is really only the early stage of a relationship and not the basis for a long-term commitment. The caution about infatuation is that it can blind your judgment and decision-making. In clarity, we learn most people commit DUIs, decisions under infatuation. So why is that? There are many effects that infatuation can have on a relationship. But if we're not careful, it can also lead to impaired judgment and relationship DUIs. So by keeping the idea that infatuation is happening in the forefront of your mind as you're spending time with somebody, getting to know this special person, You can then act with clarity when you are infatuated. We're in this stage of infatuation. So you are then remaining aware of infatuation and that it will be subsiding to avoid making any important relationship decisions until the stage completes. So for example, when partners who meet each other strike up a relationship and within a month are moving in with each other or getting married, often end up separating just as quickly. So granted, the idea of waiting sometimes in a relationship, it might feel counterintuitive to what you're really feeling. After all, waiting, that postponing that immediate gratification and reward, it can be difficult. This requires mindfulness and it's self-awareness instead of taking impulsive actions, the way that the media and even our friends may encourage us to. In order to avoid becoming one of the 50% of Americans who end up getting a divorce, waiting is really important. Monitoring and accounting for the effects of infatuation on a relationship, whether new or long-term, does not mean that it has to end. However, it does require a mutual understanding by both partners about where they currently are in the relationship. It also requires that both partners are willing to build a relationship that is based on real love. So how do we know when we can really trust ourselves enough to make the jump into a larger commitment with someone? During the dating process, clear thinkers know that they are meeting their idealized version of a potential partner who they're seeing in the best possible light. Yeah, so this stage can last a year up until 2 years. So instead of being lost in a fantasy of finding your perfect partner, you can just relax on a conscious level and enjoy their company as you navigate this stage. You should establish a policy of honesty and respect with your partner. Don't try to hide who you are or make yourself into some idealistic version of what your partner wants. Infatuation is a process that you need to really track with as you make your way through it. If your partner abruptly professes their love during the stage of infatuation, you can acknowledge their feelings, but also help keep them in check. So let them know that you also are really enjoying getting to know them, but that you need to take things just a little bit slow. So you don't want to shoot their feelings down or make them even feel foolish for expressing this love that they're feeling. Rather, share with them that your view of the early stage of getting to know someone is the infatuation stage. So invite them to see this too. And if they're mature, they'll be accepting and respect your views. They'll be impressed. They might even learn a little bit about mindfulness from you. However, if they become upset, angry, or are put off, that is a big red flag. So keep in mind that during the stage of infatuation, you're going to want to be aware of potential red flag behaviors. This is what's most important. So don't blind yourself to the signs of potential problems that might later develop while you are enjoying their company and their romantic expressions. But at the same time, you're not looking to criticize. You're simply keeping your eyes open for any of the negative characteristics mentioned in the clarity video. Here are a few questions to keep in mind during infatuation in order to identify red flag behaviors. Does your partner seem to conceal their emotions or thoughts? Do they act superficial, throw tantrums, sound defensive, have difficulties communicating and listening? Do they blame or shame others? And is their perspective taking flexible? Do they gossip or focus on talking about other people? Do they sound like a victim from outside factors? Do they speak negatively about their former partners? Answers of yes to these types of questions are red flags. You also want to make sure that you can answer yes to the most critical question. Does your partner have a willingness to grow and develop as a person? Take the time to observe this person. Is really what's happening during the stage of infatuation. Over the next year, you'll be inviting your partner to grow with you. That involves getting outside of your comfort zones, finding opportunities to expand your awareness and challenge your perspectives. It's never too late for a long-term couple also to recommit and take action in growing together for an even healthier relationship. So if you find yourself believing that your partner has changed since you first met them, you might be stuck comparing them to that best version of themselves that they were displaying during the stage of infatuation. So letting go of those idealistic versions of one another is the first hurdle to conquer in your journey to finding clarity. Everyone has baggage in some form of another from their past experiences. It's important to know if your partner has enough self-awareness to actually recognize how the impact of their past affects their relationship with you. Have they spent time working on themselves? Do they even value counseling? These are the types of questions that you'll want to be able to answer with complete honesty at the close of the infatuation stage. A partner's reactions to opportunities of growth and change will significantly affect their ability to participate in a long-term relationship. There are no excuses for continuing a relationship with a person who is unable to make that transition from infatuation to a more committed relationship. A partner that does not understand the value of personal development is what we call a deal breaker. So if you've made it through the infatuation stage and you feel that your partner is someone who has really proven that they value personal growth, you can then move on to assessing emotional maturity and eventually a committed relationship. So the final thought to take away from all of this is that infatuation is a perfectly natural stage in relationships. It's the stage that is meant to be enjoyed, but it's not the only stage of a relationship or the best of them all. Partners in a healthy love relationship really recognize that infatuation is what drew them to each other, and it's merely a beginning stage. It's when we get really comfortable with another person over time that we can really build an honest and loving relationship with a healthy future. Thank you for watching.